The act of kindness. It was a cold, chilly afternoon when little Emma walked home from school. The leaves were starting to fall from the trees, and the air had that sharp winter bite that made her pull her scarf tighter around her neck. The streets were filled with busy people rushing to get home before the sun disappeared. Emma, just 8 years old, liked walking home by herself. It gave her time to think and look at the world around her. As she walked down the street, her eyes caught sight of someone sitting on the cold pavement in front of a small park. A woman wrapped in a thin, worn-out blanket sat alone. Her face was hidden under a hood, and her shoulders were hunched, as though trying to keep herself warm. She looked tired, lost, and alone. Emma's heart sank. She had seen people in the park before, but something about this woman seemed different. She looked as though she hadn't had a meal or a warm place to sleep in a long time. Emma didn't know why, but she couldn't just walk past her. She stopped, her eyes fixed on the woman. Her mother always told her to be kind, to help others when she could, and Emma took those words seriously. She wanted to help, but she wasn't sure how. The wind blew harder, and Emma saw the woman shiver. Without thinking, she reached up and pulled the scarf from around her neck. It was bright red with soft wool, her favorite scarf, but it didn't matter. Emma gently walked over to the woman and knelt down beside her. "Excuse me, miss," Emma said in a soft voice. "I have an extra scarf, and I think you might need it more than I do." The woman looked up slowly. Her eyes were tired, but they brightened just a little when she saw Emma's kind face. Emma smiled and held the scarf out to her. "Oh, thank you, dear," the woman said, her voice weak but filled with gratitude. "You have no idea how much this means to me." Emma smiled again and helped wrap the scarf around the woman's shoulders. It was just a simple gesture, but to the woman, it felt like the world. Emma then stepped back and said, "I hope you feel better soon. Take care." The woman watched her with wide eyes, clearly touched. Emma waved and turned to leave. As she walked away, she glanced back once more. The woman was looking at the scarf, running her fingers over the soft wool, as if she couldn't believe someone would be so kind. Emma felt something warm in her chest. She hadn't done much, just given away her scarf. But somehow, it felt right. The street was still busy, but in that moment, it felt like the world had paused, just for a second, to thank her for the small act of kindness. As Emma continued her walk home, her mind kept returning to the woman in the park. What was her story? Why was she sitting there all alone in the cold? Was she okay? Emma wished she could do more, but she wasn't sure how. When she finally reached her house, she opened the front door and slipped inside. The warmth of the house made her realize just how cold it had been outside. She kicked off her shoes and put her backpack down. Her mom was in the kitchen, busy with dinner. "Hi, honey. How was your day?" her mom asked, smiling at her. Emma smiled back, but her mind was still on the woman in the park. "It was okay, Mom," she replied. "I saw someone today. A woman. She was really cold, so I gave her my scarf." Her mom looked up from the stove and raised an eyebrow. "That was very kind of you, sweetie. But do you think she's okay?" "I don't know," Emma said, her voice quieter. She looked like she needed help. "I hope she's okay." Her mom walked over and gave her a hug. "I'm sure she appreciated your kindness, Emma. You did something good today." Emma nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to do more. She felt like something important had happened, but she didn't know what. She had helped the woman, yes, but was that really enough? As the evening went on, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the woman in the park. It wasn't just the cold or the blanket. There was something in her eyes that made Emma feel like she wasn't just helping a stranger. Emma knew that this woman's life was much more complicated than it appeared. The next morning, Emma awoke early, determined to find out more. She had to know if the woman was okay. She decided that, after school, she would go back to the park. She knew it might be a long shot, but she felt like she had to do something. The woman had been alone, but Emma didn't want her to feel forgotten. She wanted to help in a way that was more than just giving away a scarf. Maybe, just maybe, she could make a real difference. And so, Emma made a promise to herself. She would return to the park and do whatever she could to make sure the woman wasn't alone anymore. It was a small act, but sometimes small acts could lead to big changes. Little did Emma know, her simple kindness was only the beginning of something much bigger. The unexpected visit. The next day, Emma walked to school with a sense of quiet anticipation. She couldn't get the image of the woman in the park out of her head. Her small act of kindness had meant so much to the woman, but Emma wondered if it had made a difference in her life. Was she okay? Had the scarf helped warm her up against the harsh cold? As Emma sat through her lessons, she kept glancing at the clock, her mind wandering. What would happen after school? Would she go back to the park and check on the woman? Part of her was excited to see if she was still there, but another part of her was nervous. She didn't know how to approach the woman again. What if the woman didn't want help? At lunch, Emma couldn't focus on her food. She picked at her sandwich, lost in thought. All the kids around her were chatting and laughing, but Emma's mind was far away. She thought about the woman, what she must have gone through, how long she had been living on the streets, and what else Emma could do for her. As soon as school was over, Emma told her mom that she was going to the park. "I just want to check on her," she said quietly, not mentioning that she was worried about the woman being alone. Her mom hesitated for a moment, but nodded. "Be careful, Emma. And remember to come home before dark." "Okay, Mom," Emma said, grabbing her coat. She was eager to help, and nothing would stop her. Walking quickly through the streets, Emma finally reached the park. It wasn't as cold as it had been the day before, but the chill still hung in the air. The trees were bare, with only a few leaves left on the branches. Emma's heart was beating fast. What would she find when she got to the park? Would the woman be there? She made her way down the path to the same spot where she had seen the woman yesterday. Her eyes scanned the area, but the woman was nowhere in sight. Emma felt a pang of disappointment. Maybe she had left. Maybe she had gone somewhere safer, warmer. But Emma still hoped. Just then, Emma heard a voice behind her. "Are you looking for someone, sweetheart?" She spun around, startled. A police officer stood there, smiling gently. Emma blinked. She didn't know what to say. Why was the officer here? I was looking for the woman who was sitting here yesterday," Emma said quietly. "She was cold, and I gave her my scarf." The officer's smile faded just a little, and he knelt down to Emma's level. "You did a kind thing, young lady," he said. "But there's something you need to know. That woman, she's not just anyone." Emma's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" The officer looked around, as if checking to make sure no one else was listening. "You see, she's been living on the streets for a while. But she's also part of something much bigger. She's been asking for help in the wrong way, and the police have been trying to help her for months. But she has some difficult choices to make." Emma stood frozen, not sure what to think. "So, she's not just a regular homeless person?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "No," the officer said. "Her story is complicated, but you should know that your kindness might have made a big difference for her. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness are the ones that open the door for something more." Emma didn't fully understand, but she could tell that the officer was trying to explain that the woman wasn't just someone to be ignored or overlooked. She had a past, a story, a life that had led her to where she was, and Emma's simple act of kindness, giving her the scarf, had made an impact. "Do you think she'll be okay?" Emma asked, her voice soft. The officer nodded. "I hope so. We'll do our best to help her, but it's going to take time." Emma stood there, looking up at the officer, trying to process everything he had said. She felt a mix of emotions, sadness for the woman, hope that she could get help, and a quiet sense of pride that her small act had been part of something bigger. "I thank you for helping her," the officer said, standing up. "Keep being kind, Emma. The world needs more people like you." Emma smiled, feeling both proud and humbled. As she turned to leave the park, she felt a sense of purpose growing inside her. She had done something good, but she now understood that kindness didn't always fix everything right away. Sometimes it was just the first step. As Emma walked home that afternoon, she thought about the officer's words. Maybe the woman in the park would be okay. Maybe she would find the help she needed. And maybe, just maybe, Emma's kindness would be the spark that led her to a better life. That evening, as Emma sat at the dinner table with her family, she couldn't help but tell their parents about what had happened at the park. Her mom and dad listened carefully, nodding in understanding. "I'm proud of you, Emma," her mom said. "You're learning that small acts of kindness can make a big difference, even when you don't see the results right away." Emma nodded, but deep down, she knew that her journey with this woman wasn't over yet. She felt an even stronger desire to do more, to be there for the woman in the park, and to help in whatever way she could. Tomorrow, Emma knew, she would return to the park, not just to check on the woman, but because her heart told her there was more she could do. And this time, she was ready for the unforeseen revelation. The following morning, Emma woke up early, her mind already filled with thoughts about the woman in the park. After hearing the police officer's words the day before, Emma couldn't stop thinking about how she could help. She was more determined than ever to find the woman and make sure she was okay. Her kindness had started something, but it didn't feel like it was enough. As Emma got ready for school, she kept glancing out of her bedroom window. The chilly autumn morning had arrived, and she could see the leaves swirling around outside. The park wasn't far from her house, and Emma made up her mind. Today, after school, she would return to see if the woman was there again. At school, Emma's thoughts were everywhere. She found it hard to concentrate on her lessons, her mind drifting back to the park, and the officer's cryptic words. "She's part of something much bigger," the officer had said. What did that mean? How could a homeless woman be part of something bigger? By the time the final bell rang, Emma couldn't wait to get outside. She hurried to the park, hoping to find a woman, to check on her and perhaps help her in some way. Emma's feet were light with anticipation, but also heavy with worry. What if the woman was gone for good? What if she had no way of finding her again? When Emma reached the park, the familiar benches and pathways greeted her, but there was no sign of the woman. Emma's heart sank. She searched the area, but it was empty, as if the woman had never been there at all. Emma stood still, staring at the empty space where they had met, and felt a deep sadness come over her. Just as Emma turned to leave, she heard the sound of a car engine slowing down behind her. She quickly turned around, her heart skipping a beat. A black SUV had pulled up near the park entrance. It was a strange coincidence. Emma had seen that car before, but only in the police officer's presence. Before Emma could wonder any further, the car door opened, and out stepped two police officers, one of whom she recognized from the day before, the officer who had spoken to her about the woman. "Emma," the officer said with a warm smile. "I thought we'd find you here." Emma's eyes widened. "What's going on? Is she okay? Where is the woman?" The officer's smile faltered for a moment. "We were hoping you could help us," he said gently. "We know you gave her your scarf, and we think you might be able to give us some more information." "More information?" Emma asked, confused. "What do you mean?" The officer took a deep breath before continuing. "The woman you helped yesterday, she's not just a regular homeless person. Her story goes much deeper than that. She's been involved in something we've been investigating for months. She's been trying to get away from a dangerous situation." Emma felt her breath catch in her throat. "Dangerous situation?" she asked, barely able to comprehend what the officer was saying. "Yes," the officer confirmed. "We're part of a special team trying to help people like her, people who have been trapped in bad situations and don't know how to escape. We've been following her for some time, but she didn't trust us enough to come forward. Your simple act of kindness, Emma, was the turning point." Emma could hardly believe what she was hearing. She had no idea that the woman in the park was caught up in something so serious. But there was one thing that kept standing out in Emma's mind. The officer had said her kindness made a difference. Could it be that her giving the scarf had started a chain of events that would help the woman get the help she needed? The officer continued, "We've been trying to get her to trust us, but it hasn't been easy. Sometimes people who have been hurt or betrayed are afraid to open up. But after what you did for her, she's finally willing to speak with us. And that's where you come in." Emma looked at the officer, her heart racing. "How can I help? I don't understand." "Emma," the officer said softly, "you've shown her that there are still good people in the world. You've shown her that kindness exists even in the darkest of places. We're hoping that she will be able to open up now, and we need someone who she trusts, someone who has been kind to her." Emma's eyes widened with realization. "You want me to talk to her again?" she asked in disbelief. I don't know if I can do that." "You already have," the officer said gently. "Your kindness is more powerful than you realize. We just need you to speak to her again, encourage her to trust us, and help us get her the support she needs. Will you do that?" Emma stood frozen, processing the weight of the situation. She never imagined that her small act of kindness, giving her scarf to a stranger, would lead to something so big. She didn't know if she was ready for this, but in her heart, she knew she couldn't back down. The woman needed help, and Emma had already started something. Now she had the chance to finish what she'd started. "I'll do it," Emma said, her voice steady. "I'll help her. I'll do whatever I can." The officer smiled warmly. "You're doing the right thing, Emma. We're here to support you." As the officers began to drive away, Emma stood there for a moment, the weight of the situation sinking in. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure. Her kindness had sparked something powerful. And now she had the chance to help this woman, to make sure she didn't feel alone anymore. Emma turned and walked back toward her house, feeling both proud and scared. She didn't know exactly how things would unfold, but one thing was clear. She was ready for whatever came next. The conversation. The following day, Emma felt the weight of her decision press down on her. She hadn't expected to be pulled into something so serious when she had offered her scarf to the woman. But now the police officers had asked her to help, to talk to someone who had been through something much darker than Emma could have imagined. Her heart pounded in her chest as she waited by the phone. The officers had said they would contact her soon, and now it was time to face what she had agreed to. Emma had never been so nervous in her life. She had helped the woman once, but could she really help her again? Could her words make a difference? As Emma sat by the phone, she thought back to the brief conversation she'd had with the officer the day before. She hadn't known much, but there had been something in the way the officer spoke that stuck with her. He had said that the woman, whose name was now known to Emma as Lisa, was finally ready to talk. It made Emma feel strangely powerful. She hadn't done much, just given a scarf to a woman who seemed to need it, but somehow that small gesture had opened a door to something much bigger. Emma couldn't ignore the responsibility she now felt. She was involved, and Lisa needed her. After what seemed like hours, the phone rang. Emma jumped at the sound, her hand trembling slightly as she picked up the receiver. It was the officer from the day before. "Emma, it's Officer Adams. How are you?" His voice was warm, reassuring. "I'm okay," Emma said, trying to steady her voice. "You said you'd be calling. Is it time?" "Yes, it is. Lisa's ready to meet with you. She trusts you now, Emma, and we believe it's the right moment for her to open up. Are you ready?" Emma hesitated. Her heart beat faster as she wondered how this conversation would go. Was she really ready for this? What would Lisa say? She was about to walk into something much deeper than a simple act of kindness. "Yes," Emma finally said, her voice stronger than she expected. "I'm ready." "Good," Officer Adams said. "We'll meet you at the park in about an hour. We're bringing Lisa there so that you can speak with her." Emma took a deep breath and hung up the phone. She had agreed to this, but now the reality of the situation hit her. She had no idea what to expect. What if Lisa didn't trust her? What if this didn't go the way the officers hoped? Despite the nerves swirling in her stomach, Emma grabbed her jacket and headed out the door. The park, once a place of peace and quiet, now felt like a stage for something much bigger. As she walked toward it, she felt the weight of her decision press down on her even more. When Emma arrived, Officer Adams was already there, standing near a bench. He looked calm, but Emma could tell that there was a certain tension in his posture. They both turned toward the sound of footsteps, and Emma saw Lisa walking toward them. The woman from the park, the one Emma had helped, was standing right in front of her. This time, Lisa didn't look as scared or lost as she had before. There was a quiet strength in her now, something different in her eyes. Lisa smiled faintly when she saw Emma, but it was a tired smile. It looked like she hadn't slept much. "Hi, Lisa," Emma said softly, her voice shaky at first, but she tried to hide it. "Hi," Lisa responded, her voice just as soft. She sat down on the bench next to Emma, her hands folded nervously in her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Officer Adams stood a little further away, giving them space. He wanted this conversation to be private, just the two of them. Emma glanced at him, and then turned her attention back to Lisa. "I'm so glad you're here, Lisa," Emma said, her voice kind but filled with concern. "I know things have been hard, but I want you to know that you don't have to face them alone anymore." Lisa's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but she nodded. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "I didn't ask for this, for all of this to happen." Emma smiled gently, trying to ease the tension. "You don't have to say anything if you don't want to," she said. "But I'm here, and I want to help. The police officers are here to help, too. You don't have to keep carrying everything by yourself." For a long moment, Lisa said nothing. Emma could see the conflict in her eyes, the battle between wanting to trust someone and the fear that had kept her from opening up before. I don't know if I can trust anyone," Lisa finally whispered. "I've been let down so many times. People have hurt me. People I thought I could trust." Emma's heart broke for her. "I can't imagine how hard that must be," she said softly. "But I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to be afraid anymore." Lisa met Emma's gaze, her eyes searching Emma's face. For a brief moment, Emma saw something shift in her, a flicker of hope, though it was faint. "I don't even know where to begin," Lisa said. "I've been running for so long, trying to get away from someone. I never thought anyone would care enough to help me." Emma's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" she asked gently. Lisa took a deep breath, and for the first time, she started to speak. Slowly, carefully, she began to tell Emma her story. The pieces of her past that had been hidden for so long. As Lisa spoke, Emma listened with all her heart. She had no idea what Lisa had gone through, but she knew that this moment was important. Emma had opened a door for Lisa, one that might help her find a way out of the darkness. And now, Emma wasn't just helping a stranger anymore. She was helping someone who had been lost and hurt, and now they both had a chance to make things right. The truth unfolds. As Lisa spoke, Emma's heart continued to race. She sat on the bench beside her, hanging onto every word, as Lisa slowly began to unravel the painful story that had kept her silent for so long. The soft breeze that rustled the leaves in the park seemed to echo the heavy silence between them, each word Lisa spoke carrying more weight than the last. The visit from the authorities. The day after their conversation, Emma felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. She had made a promise to Lisa, and she couldn't back down now. Her heart ached for Lisa, who had endured so much, and Emma knew that helping her meant not just offering words of comfort, but following through with real action. The authorities had to be involved, but that didn't make the situation any less terrifying for Lisa. Lisa had barely slept the night before. The thoughts and memories of the past weighed heavily on her, making her restless. Emma could tell that Lisa was still struggling with the fear of trusting anyone. And now, with the police potentially involved, the anxiety was overwhelming. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," Lisa whispered as they sat together in Emma's living room, the weight of her decision hanging in the air. Emma had made it clear that contacting the authorities was the best way to ensure Lisa's safety. But the fear of what might happen still loomed large in Lisa's mind. It wasn't just the trauma from her past, it was the uncertainty of what this next step would bring. "You don't have to do anything alone anymore, Lisa," Emma reassured her voice soft but steady. "The police are here to help you. They'll protect you." Lisa looked out the window, watching the sun begin to set, casting long shadows over the quiet neighborhood. Her eyes were filled with doubt, but there was also a flicker of something else, an ember of hope that was slowly starting to burn brighter. Just then, a knock on the door interrupted the silence. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She could tell by Lisa's reaction that she was just as nervous. For a moment, neither of them moved, but then Emma stood up, walking slowly toward the door. When she opened it, two uniformed police officers stood on the other side. Their presence was professional yet warm, their expressions serious but kind. "Good evening, Mom," one of the officers said. "We're here to speak with Lisa." Lisa froze at the sound of the officer's voice. She had wanted this moment, but now that it was happening, her body tensed with fear. Emma turned to Lisa, offering her a reassuring smile. "They're here to help," Emma said softly. "It's time, Lisa. It's time to take that first step." Lisa stood up slowly, her legs shaking as she made her way toward the door. The officers greeted her with calm respect, understanding the emotional burden she was carrying. "I'm Officer Davis," one of the officers introduced himself, his tone gentle. "And this is Officer Martinez. We're here to make sure you're safe." Lisa nodded, still unsure of what to expect. Emma stayed close by, offering her support with every step. The officers led Lisa to a quiet corner of the living room, where they began to ask her questions. Their voices were kind, but firm, as they guided her through the process of explaining her situation. It was clear that they were well-trained, experienced in handling sensitive cases like hers. Emma remained in the background, watching as the officers worked their way through the details. She knew that Lisa's story needed to be heard, but it wasn't easy. Lisa's voice faltered as she recalled the painful moments of her past. Emma could see the emotions swirling inside her, but she didn't interrupt. This was Lisa's story to tell, and Emma would be there to support her in any way she could. As the officers took notes and asked more questions, Emma's mind raced. She knew that this was just the beginning, and that things were likely to get more difficult before they got better. But there was one thing she was certain of: Lisa was not alone anymore. She had taken the first step, and that meant everything. "Oh," after a long conversation, Officer Davis looked up at Lisa, his expression softening. "Thank you for sharing this with us, Lisa. We know it's not easy, but we're going to make sure you get the help you need. We'll be in touch soon to discuss the next steps." Lisa nodded, her eyes a little clearer than before. The officers said their goodbyes, promising to be in touch soon. As they left, Emma closed the door behind them, and Lisa slumped back into the couch, exhausted. The silence in the room felt different now. It was quieter, but there was a sense of relief in the air. Lisa had taken a huge step toward healing, and Emma could see that the weight on her shoulders had lightened just a little bit. "Thank you," Lisa whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't think I could do it." Emma smiled and sat down beside her. "You did it, Lisa. And you're going to keep going, one step at a time." Lisa wiped her eyes, trying to smile through the tears. "I'm scared, Emma," she admitted. "I don't know what's going to happen next." Emma placed a reassuring hand on Lisa's shoulder. "I know, but we'll face it together. You don't have to be afraid anymore. The worst is over." As Lisa sat in the quiet aftermath of the police visit, Emma knew that the road ahead would still be difficult, but the hardest part was behind them. Lisa had opened up, and now, together, they would start to rebuild the trust that had been broken so long. A new beginning. The days following the visit from the police felt like a blur. For Lisa, everything had changed in a way she couldn't quite understand yet. The fear she had lived with for so long was slowly fading, replaced by a growing sense of hope. But hope, as Emma had often reminded her, was a fragile thing, one that needed nurturing and care. Lisa's heart was still heavy with the memories of her past, but there was now a quiet strength in her that hadn't been there before. It was as if she had shed a layer of the old pain, even though the scars remained. She knew it wasn't going to be easy, but she was determined to take things one day at a time. Emma had become not just a friend, but a lifeline. She had helped Lisa see that kindness, no matter how small, could start a chain of events that would lead to something bigger than either of them had imagined. Emma's belief in Lisa was something that Lisa was starting to believe in herself. She was no longer defined by her past. She was more than the homeless woman she once was. She was stronger, braver, and ready to face whatever came next. The police had kept their promise. Officer Davis and Officer Martinez had remained in close contact with Lisa, guiding her through the steps needed to secure a better future. They connected her with shelters and resources she didn't even know existed. The next few weeks were filled with appointments and paperwork, but Lisa felt a sense of purpose she hadn't had in years. The officers didn't treat her like a victim. They treated her like a person, someone worthy of a fresh start. One afternoon, as Emma and Lisa sat in the cozy living room, sipping tea, Lisa looked out the window, lost in thought. Emma noticed the change in her. There was a peacefulness in her face now, a quiet assurance that hadn't been there before. "I can't believe this is really happening," Lisa said softly, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "I feel like a whole new person." Emma smiled warmly. "You're not new, Lisa. You're just you, finally able to live without fear holding you back." Lisa's eyes glistened as she nodded. She had come so far, and though she knew the journey wasn't over, she felt like she was walking down a path of her own choosing, for the first time in years. The doorbell rang, snapping Lisa from her thoughts. Emma stood up, walking toward the door, and Lisa followed hesitantly, wondering who it might be. When Emma opened it, she was surprised to see Officer Davis standing there, a warm smile on his face. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he greeted, tipping his hat slightly. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Of course not," Emma replied, stepping aside to let him in. "What brings you by?" "I just wanted to check in with Lisa," Officer Davis said, turning to the young woman with kind eyes. "See how you're doing." Lisa smiled nervously, unsure of how much she wanted to share, but she knew that Officer Davis had been nothing but kind and supportive from the very start. "I'm doing better," she said quietly, though her voice trembled slightly. "I've been working on getting everything settled with the shelter, and I feel more in control than I've ever felt." "That's great to hear," Officer Davis said, nodding approvingly. "I'm really proud of you, Lisa, and we'll continue to help you, whatever you need." He handed her a small envelope. "This is for you. It's from a local organization that heard about your situation and wanted to offer a little support. I hope it helps." Lisa's eyes widened as she opened the envelope, finding a check inside, along with a letter offering her assistance for rent and living expenses while she got back on her feet. I don't know what to say," Lisa stammered, overwhelmed. This is too much. I never expected anything like this." "It's not too much," Officer Davis said gently. "You've earned it. You've shown a lot of courage, and we want to help you succeed." Lisa wiped a tear from her eye, not quite believing that this was happening. She had lived in the shadows for so long, never imagining that people could be so kind. It was as if the world was opening up to her in ways she had never thought possible. Emma put a hand on Lisa's shoulder, offering her silent support. "See, Lisa, there's always hope. Sometimes you just have to take that first step, and everything else starts to fall into place." The officer smiled before heading toward the door. Take care, Lisa. And remember, we're here if you need anything." As the door closed behind him, Lisa looked at Emma, her heart full. She had started with nothing but a small act of kindness, and now she was on the path to rebuilding her life. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in years, she truly believed that she could overcome whatever came her way. Emma squeezed her shoulder gently. "You did it, Lisa. You're on your way." Lisa nodded, feeling the weight of her past slowly lifting. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. It was a new beginning, and this time she was ready to embrace it.